needs to be somewhere else this afternoon. I want to welcome everybody. We never in our wildest dreams thought that we would have such a big audience. We've got our normal GGSA members, then we've got the Cape Town Family History Society, we've got the Friends of Joburg, we've got the Durbanville Heritage Society, and if there are any other organizations that I did not mention. Oh, Stella Ward? No, he's one of our members. We even have Dr. Helen Robinson here, so we are in very good company today. Dr. Sleigh has agreed at last minute to change his talk from Afrikaans to English. Afterwards, we're going to have a very, very short period for questions. Unfortunately, there's so many people here and everybody's going to want to have a question. So we're only going to be able to take, say, maybe, well, you can decide how many questions you want to take afterwards. But please keep your questions very short afterwards. And then I'll present Dr. Dan Sleigh.
Thank you. I don't know whether you can hear me at the back. I can't see you. Although you can't see me, I'm the lucky one. Let us go forward into the past and see. I know that your interest is family history and mine is the history of the Dutch East India Company, not only at the Cape, worldwide. And there's quite a we have a strong society called the VOC Foundation. We do conservation and education and cultural tourism, these three things. And so let's see if we can bring the history of the Dutch East India Company and your interest in family history together. Is that a question there?
No, somebody was dropping.
It's a something. I don't think so well. Now what you see on the screen is the Brouwer route, the black dotted line. It's the Brouwer route, named after Governor General Gerhardus Brouwer in March of 1617. Last year we commemorated the 400th anniversary of that important discovery. You can see that there are the high pressure systems, 4 high pressure systems, the North Atlantic, South Atlantic high pressure system, the North Equatorial and the Indian. And in the northern hemisphere, the air and the water circulate around it anti-clockwise. In the southern hemisphere, they circulate clockwise. So you take the, moving air, is wind, and moving water is current, and those are the two things that move a ship. So you take the Canaries current and you cross over there into the Brazil current, you pick up the Tristan da Cunha is there you pick up the Great Westerly, the West Australian, and that's where the producers are. And to get back to the markets in Northern Europe, you see that you are past Mauritius before it is March, April, because that is hurricane season. And we've lost many ships there, many ships around about Mauritius. And then here the Ogallis current goes round the Cape and we pick up after the maritime replenishment, we used to call it in Standard 3 refreshment station. Now that's the biggest bird of nonsense. Maritime replenishment is closer to the truth. I mean, what, four wagon loads of fuel, firewood per ship, is that any kind of refreshment? That is a very important product. Then the weather current and we cross over into the Gulf Stream, and the Gulf Stream takes us right around the top of England. So you can see why it had to be there, because the currents and the winds, they're not perfectly at the Cape. Why it had to be Table Bay, couldn't be Durban, couldn't be Mossel Bay, couldn't be anywhere else but there. And that is why we are here. That is how our ancestors came to be here, came to settle here, because of that. the invisible building bricks of history. Okay, next slide, please. So, there you see it, the green is the outward route and the red is the homeward route. And the Dutch government depended heavily on the VOC as its main ship owner, biggest taxpayer, and biggest employer. And the VOC depended on the Eastern trade, and the Eastern trade depended on successful shipping. Successful shipping depended on maritime replenishment, and maritime replenishment at the Cape depended on the outstations, of which there were 57. Buiteposte. Next slide, please. That book there has the history of 57 Buiteposte. Now, a Buiteposte in the context of the Cape Maritime Replenishment Service was a manned, it had to be manned, decentralized auxiliary service station under the management of the county policy at the Cape and operating outside the Table Land with the purpose to provide service, maritime replenishment to its ships. Now, of the 57 manned outstations, we will talk about only 22 today, less than half, where 44 ancestors whose surnames I will mention, but I don't know anything about the families. I don't know any family history. I know who my mother and father were, and that's enough for me. 44 ancestors whose descendants are still with us today. Van Meren, for instance. Any Van Merens about? Yeah. Hello, Jago. They work there either as forcehouders, which is the boss, or forcefolk, which is the crew. And of course, at a great variety of tasks. Now, the first of these that we look at today, please, is Leopold. There. That is outside. It fits the analysis, not the analysis, the description. What is the other word for it?
Definition.
Criteria. But it is just outside the Table Land. And their hut was there in the kloof, and they climbed the hill every day. At first there were 2 men, and they took turns at look out there, and if ships were seen, they fired a gun. And this would start the whole process of ship replenishment. Before they can come ashore, they had to be visited by the fiscal, a medical man, and the harbour master, the Kopati minister, to inspect the ships that things were as they should be, before they can anchor. Before they were guided to the anchorage by the harbour master. Now, to show you how important this was, this outstation, Leopold, how important it was. You know what happened in 1730? When the return fleet spent the night in Camps Bay, there was no flag on the hill, and they knew that they were not permitted to enter Table Bay. So they spent the night in Camps Bay, and the next morning, early in February, sunrise was quite early, around about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. They sailed into the bay and they anchored, to the surprise of everybody. Who is this and what is happening here? Now, where were the signalmen? The chap's name by great coincidence is Van der Berg. Van der Berg, no, he was not in answer. He was deported. He was found drunk in the hut in the crew. But with that fleet of 1730, Van Sleigh was the admiral. With that fleet came the pox epidemic. And you know what that did? How many thousands died? He nearly exterminated the Khoiks. Okay, let's look at, oh yes, the name of an ancestor, Funk. When I was small, there was a chicken farmer by the name of George Funk at Durbanville. I'm wondering if there are still some of the descendants left there. Funk, B-I-N-K. Now, the next one. The Transvaal tells me he's got the southeastern all sorted out now. If it blows from that direction, it's not going to rain, but if the southeastern blows from that direction. Now my question to you is, from which direction does the southeastern blow? I live here down below the hill, and here in Pine was a pine forest. And the trees are all leaning over to the northeast. What does that mean? He comes from the southwest. It's the southwest that he's knocked silly by that hill there and split it into Cape Town from the southeast. So they recorded it in the company's documents as the southeast. But here's the proof. Look, you know that aeroplanes take off and land against the wind? So that's when it's from the northwest, and that's when it's from the southwest. Okay. The product of this, it had many, many products, but the two important things were, here were mounds of seashells here, that over the centuries the sea had broken and cast up on the rocks here, and these seashells were collected by prisoners and carried it to the little bay there was a little bay, and they loaded into boats and brought, and the whole of Cape Town was built with lime from Rollin Island, seashell lime. The other thing, of course, is the slate quarry over there, on the other side of the lighthouse. The slate, look at the castle, it's paved with Rollin Island slate. Yeah, let's look at the next one, please. Yeah, there's the little bay, the boats, can you enlarge slightly? There we are. Now we're talking. Those houses are free builder houses. And that is the jail, and also it's nicely gabled. There's a step gable over there. And a sconce with some cannon around it, and the guardhouse, and there's the guard. And these are the fellows who work the shell line and the slate quarry. Ancestor, family, Arbor. But then, of course, there's Pieternella van Mierel. She spent from her third year, when her parents finally married, until her mother died at the age of 12. She spent her life on that island, the child. Then she was picked, not picked up, what's the word?
Chosen.
Adopted by they took her into the house. She and her two brothers by from the Bale family, carpenter. Van der Bale, who lived at Babylon's children, grew up in the same house as Peter Nella. I think the first grant of land, the first grant of Babylon's children was to Peter van der Bale. I beg pardon?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you come closer to me? We'll buy another ticket. Right, so I think that Pieternella van Mierel was an ancestress to many, many people alive today. But we'll come back to her. The last slide of all, we'll come back to her. Now the next picture, please, and make it as big as you possibly can. On this, there are 4 outstations. There's Rustenburg, but we have a bigger slide of that. There's Belmont Road over the Liesveld. There the road divides. St. Paul's Church is on the hill. There the road goes up to the Posses. There's the crowd and the workshops, wagon makers and things. Here's the other one, Nieuweland, and here's Paradise, woodcutters, post. The ruins are still there. I think people from UCT. Now, the function of this scheme, we'll only talk about the scheme now. Originally, it was founded to grow wheat or bread, but from 1673, it was changed to the transport depot. And there were about a crew of about 100 and staff, and some city wagons and 3,000 oxen, draft oxen. And half of the oxen worked here, transported things to Cape Town and to Simonstown and to all the other outstations round about the world. But this was their base, to ski. So it was only a granary for about from 59 to 73, I wanted that 14 years. But it retained the name Diski. And the families there, the Van der Merwe, Alleman, Baard, Carinus, Hofmeyer, Opperman, Raab. Those were very fertile ancestors, really all of them, especially Van der Merwe. The Hofmeyers are very talented people, I know. I knew one called George, great guy, died very early, unfortunately. Now let's look at the next one, please. Is that the biggest reason? You'll say that's small. Oh yeah, look, my hat's small, like. And that's where the road divides, you see? Yeah. So the scheme is just here. And that's Rustenburg Girls Junior School. And when you travel along the Vaal, there you see that little garden house there, just below the university. Baxter is here next to it, Baxter Theatre. And its function was to produce vegetables, original vegetables, for the ships. Remember that the freeburgers didn't provide vegetables. Those small market gardens that gave their name to the suburb gardens, Tuinen, they produced for the Green Market Square, where the public bought them, but they didn't sell to the company. The company produced its own. And also, at first the governors used it as a summer residence, and later the Secunda used it as from Tilmas time onwards, the Secunda used it as a summer residence. And right at the end there was a large vineyard where the Secunda produced wine for its own account, but with the company's labor, slaves and paid postfolk. And that's where the Versace family originated. And Roeland, after whom Roeland Street in Cape Town is called. Herter, I think they've all gone to the Transvaal, because the only one Herters that I know, Herters are in the Transvaal, Northern Transvaal. And then Hoots. Now, I one day spoke to the principal of Rustenburg Girls Junior, and I told her that the last course over here was named Hoots. And she said, remarkable, because we have a little Hoots girl in this school. Yeah, and they didn't know that. And then the next one is, there we are. In Nieuweland, Sax High, Sax Junior, Newlands Swimming Pool, Newlands Rugby, Brewery. On that early one we looked at of the streets, it shows here Roger. R-O-G-I-E-R, Rogier. Now that is Rutger Metzing, who was the earliest of Boers here on this side. You know, he had that trouble with the slave girl who murdered their child and she was strangled to death. And he got away with it all. But he was the one responsible. Metzing. Now, there's the governor's house from Tilburg town, and that is the process. And these are all fruit and vegetables for the company. Look, right across the district onto the other side. That's the district there. And that's the main road there. And that's Dean Street, and that's the avenue. Now, let's have a look at the governor's house. It's a lovely little baroque item. There she is. There's Oktober sitting on the stoop. when Somerset was governor, he changed that to a double story. And when it collapsed after the first heavy rains, he blamed it poor Dutch foundations. But he's a remarkable character, that remarkable character. I rather like him. Okay, now let's go into the country and look at that map. That yellow block there is the Slaggersveld. You know that there's a very busy road running through it up to Saldanha Bay and so on. These days. But then the Slaggersveld was set aside for the use of the 3 and sometimes 4 contracted butchers who supplied meat, not draft oxen. Those draft oxen came from the Koina. Why do you think they were impoverished and lost their land? For the company's transport service. But the meat, these butchers went into the Karoo wherever there were trekboeren. And they would buy up cattle and sheep. And the meat, the mutton went to the hospital, to the barracks, not so much to the slave lodge, and to the privileged upper crust, the government people, governor, secondary, council policy, etc. Now, so that is the Slaggersveld. But in the Slaggersveld, look, Dana Fontaine is just here, where the power station is, just here. And there is Schielbeck at the tip of the Saldanha Bay. It's now called the Lammerbaum Lagoon, but its name is Saldanha Bay. I don't know why they keep on changing names. Whenever you look, there's a new name. Now they don't know that the old name is Slaggersveld anymore. That's not good. But in the Slaggersveld, the company reserved 3 outstations. Groenekloof, Gansekraal, and Klavervallei for themselves. Where the resting, now when we talk about the skier, or I talk about the skier, I said half the cattle stayed at the ski. The other half went to recover. You know, you can work an ox for about 3 months, then you must rest and gain weight and muscle again. The company worked their oxen to death, over the roads. There were no roads. Through the thick sand of the Cape Flats and over the mountains and Simon's Town, and there were no roads. And from between 800 and 1,000 oxen died a year, every year. They had to be replaced. So on these 3 outstations, the company kept Possover and some Postvol, and then to look after the cattle. Right, and the next one, please. And that is that Gansekraal? Yes. Gansekraal, house, stables, slave lodge, and what does it say there? Stall, it says stall. And there are the gardens. Now, Gansekraal, next one, please. There's Gansekraal. It's an Elliott Toto, but it is printed back to front. That house should stand on this side, and this house stands on that side. It is, this is the main dwelling, and that is the stables there. And that is Elliot's little motor car. I don't know why the archives printed it back to front.
It was glass negatives, so you didn't really know that.
Absolutely correct, yeah. But you should see that the number is backwards. The number of the motor car. It ends with AC. Okay, now let's watch that building now. This one is gone, it's not a trace of it. But there are very pretty flowers growing over it. As I said, I was there yesterday. Let's look at that building now, as it appears now. See there, all the windows and doors exactly as in the previous one. The farm burned down in 1965. Fortunately, old Eddie Bertie of the National Monuments Council took measurements and photographs and everything about 3 months before it was burned down. It belongs to Nature Conservation now, and they have hopes of rebuilding as far as possible and making a headquarters for themselves there in the town, which is a very, very good idea. Okay, now, oh yes, I forgot to mention the family at Nieuweland, the fun sales come from there. And then at Gansekraal, De Goede and Wenzel, those ancestors were there. So, poor old Gansekraal. Now let's look at Groenekloof, next one. And there it is. Now, that building and those 3 long houses there, these Luna Rock and so on, and there's a 2-seater lavatory there. And there's the crowd there. Let's look at it now. Next one. Yeah, but that's not the way it is now. I want to see it now. See, there are the 3 longhouses and the 4 sides, lovely gabled and with stoop benches and all. There's a huge school here now and a church where that wagon is and so on. Is there a slide, the next slide, what it looks like now? No. Okay, Groenekloof and Schreeder. The Schreeder family comes with it. And here, go into the next one, please. At Saldanha Bay, and get as close to that blue spot as you can. There, you see the little thatched and gabled house? That is Buiteposte. Buiteposte is here, round the corner there at Kraalhuis. There's the ruins of Buiteposte. But Buiteposte is here. Although the people who live there and who own it, they call it Buiteposte. They get it wrong. And the family, Stofberg. Any Stofbergs here today? That's where they come from. Then a bit further north, we go to St. Helena Bay. Next one. Next slide, please. There. Now, if you go there, you see that the word Soldatenpost are written there. Soldatenpost. And there the company had an outstation, and its function was to watch the battery, to watch for ships that come to water there, especially American whalers. They caught whales and seals on the islands and off the coast of South Africa. That's where they got their oil for the first industrial revolution. Oiled the gears and the wheels of the industrial revolution. And the man in charge was Sergeant Trudeau. He became the ancestor of the Trudeau family. Now we are back, the next one is back to the Cape Peninsula again. And just here is Bas Harman's kraal. You will see around about there, if you zoom in on that. Bas Harman's kraal. Now, Harman was Harman van Baarle. It's named after him, but he was a bachelor, so no descendants. The oxen that came from the skew were the wagons with cargo and provisions for the ships in Simon's Bay were outstand here at the Bas Harman's kraal and a new team in Spain. Then when they came back from Simonstown, these were now rested, and the old one in Spain again, and so back to the scheme. That was then Bas Harman's kraal. And the family there, Vosloo, ancestors of the Vosloo's there. Vosloo, I know, later became a freeburger. He owned a farm near the Voelvlei, near other side of Wellington. And if you see his name there, written next to the farm, they call it Bas Jan. Bas Jan is to identify him from all the other, sorry, not Bas Jan, Jan Bas. Because he was the Bas also of the outstation. There would be Lang Jan and Kort Jan and Dem Jan and all. And he was Jan Bas. So you will see his name on the map written there. From his farm. Then we go to Vissel. There, and you see that the road ends at Vissel. It does not yet continue to Simonstown. There is the little house, and it still exists. There are people living in it. Do you know the old? I think he was a chemist. Mossop, M-O-S-S-O-P, and he wrote some books for the Economic Society, and he misidentified several outstations. But he lived in that house. And so, the compagnie's vissers, it says there. And there were a number of slaves who manned the boats that caught the fish for the other slaves in the slave lodge. Because they preferred a diet of fish and rice. They didn't use much meat. Fish and rice. I can't say that I agree with it. Very good taste. It's much more healthy in the first place. And the family ancestor there, Van der Waals, they became farmers in the northern Karoo and in the Makwaland, so his sons. But Jelle van der Waals, I see in some books he's called Giele. But Jelle is a Frisian name. J-E-L-L-E, Jelle van der Waals. What is that well-known famous old family street? The club for the Christmas. Over there in farm. There he is called Giele. G-E-E, Giele Andries van der Waals. It's Jelle. Okay, now let's look at Vissel, the next one. And you will see in the first place, the next slide, please. There. Now the bigger, much better. Now the road continues there from Bas Harman's kraal and Flame and round Muizenburg and Kalkbaai and Vissel. Now there's a garden. This is the big circle here in Vissel, where you go off to Murray. There's the little house. And you know that the train, the Simonstown railway line, the train goes right next to the house. If you stand in the house and put your hands out, you touch a train. Right next to it, right next to it. Say about the distance from here to that wall. And, but it's the original house. It is now being divided. It is now 2 houses actually, but it was one. The garden in 1743, Simon's Bay became the winter harbour, compulsory, and the choice. If you entered Table Bay, you were in for trouble. And that is when the road was built, or what was just a track to Simon's Town. But now, where would that refreshment vegetables come from? Because there's a very good fountain, and the fountain is still there next to the church. At that circle in Bishop, there's a church on your right hand side. When you go to Wood, turn off to Wood, that fountain is in the ground with that church. Very strong fountain. And so they set up a vegetable garden there. Remember, when you talk about the company's vegetable garden, it's not the one, in all likelihood, it's not the one in Cape Town. The company had 5 vegetable gardens. And that one in Cape Town was soon used for the amusement and the pleasure of visitors. But it was the garden. Yes, this is the family. Olwachen was, now there were several gardeners there, one succeeded the other. The one who left a family behind was Olwachen. And let's look now at Simon's Bay down here. The winter harbour from 1743. There's a hospital, and the governor's house, and the Poste there behind the flag, and the doctor's house, and the stables. And that building there is the harbour masters, the Buiteposte package. The sailors and the slaves lived in the top story, and in the bottom part you had the sails and the yards and the anchors and whatever the ship might require. And they required a lot. All these things had to be transported by wagon to Simon's Bay. And when there were ships, then the cargo had to be brought by wagon to the castle in Cape Town. Just have a look at the oh yes, that building, I believe, does still exist in Simon's Bay, in a modern dockyard. Much altered, but you can recognize it by the width of the walls and things, and the beams. It's now part of the Naval Museum in Simon's Town. Now look at that. There's no road. It's just seaside, and the poor oxen have to drag through there. It's dragging loaded wagons through there. And the families, Denise and Kirsten and Brad. 3, well, all 3 of them became very rich, very influential people eventually after they became railroads. Now we go to Land van Wapen, which is where Ruderslandskerk, there, Ruderslandskerk. And this is the Bergerfield here, and that's Klein Bergerfield, and this is the 24 field here. Now the company's route to Swellendam went through here. There's the Breederfield there. And you go all along the Breederfield through that narrow kloof there, and you exit the other side at a place called Storm's Place. And then you are very close to Swellendam. Now the Poste was there, just inside there. The old station was there, Tulbach Wes-Kaap, not Tulbach Station, Tulbach Wes-Kaap. And that, the railway buildings are still there. And the family, the ancestors, Verreina and Skabbelt. I knew a judge, real old-fashioned hanging judge, Skabbelt, big Skabbelt. But I think their house, or there's something about the rose garden at Durbanville to do with Scotland, I can't remember exactly what. Okay, that's it. There, near the Rose Garden. That's it, yes. So I suppose their farm was, he had a facility.
Yes.
Thank you. And now we go to Klapnitz. Now, in our archives, this exists in black and white only. So you had to go to the Netherlands to get the thing in color. And then you begin to wonder, and what is this? And you see that there's a new section. Can you see that the stoop is off center? That's the original outside wall. Now the stoop is centered, and not the stoop, the steps. So this is a new flat built onto it for a very important visitor. Look, a rare inside lavatory. And that is what color does to a map. It tells so much more. Now, what was the function of Klapnitz? Buiteposte Klapnitz. The company also called it the Wes-Kaap, because between Klapnitz and Kurds Rivier, that whole thing was the company's Wes-Kaap. And the people who, the postman and postfolk at Klapnitz, had to mow that and load it onto wagons and bring it to the Cape for the horses, the company's horses that were stable. Wes-Kaap, later the name Buiteposte stuck for that region. And there are people who still call it Buiteposte, travel through the Buiteposte to get to Stellenbosch. But the Buiteposte on the ship is the pantry from where food is dispensed. Now, of course, this refers to the Wes-Kaap, to the hay that was harvested there and brought to Cape Town. And the families, Klute, the original Klute, one of Jan van Riebeek's people. Early old Father Klute was found murdered in Cape Town in the streets one morning. One morning he was stabbed to death at the age of 84. And that was the original Klute. And also Luke, although they pronounced it Luch, L-O-O-C-K, because you sometimes come across the name as Luch. Luch, Smalberger, and Hannekom. Now, when Hannekom became a freebird, he built himself a house that still stands near Citrus Down. When you cross over the Piccaninny's Kloof Pass, and you come to the bottom where it is, where you can see Citrus Down over there, what is called the old door, beautifully restored little houses. And they point out to you, that's where ancestor Hannekom lived. And he must have left 100 children, big grandchildren. So the Hannekoms are all over, even in the ANC you get on that. And now, to the next one, the Buiteposte Bodentrotselland. When the scheme ceased to be the granary in 1673, they established a Buiteposte here on the Lawrence River. You see there? And there comes the road from the Cape, and it crosses the Eerste and the Tweede Rivier. And there you see the little building there on the right next to the river. And then the huts of the laborers there, slaves mostly, and the company's wheat fields and fruit trees and so on. Now, what became of the Buiteposte ancestor had married a slave, and Potgieter, ancestor Potgieter was one of the descendants. Now let's look at what became. Let's look at a later map. This one, just go back to the previous one, please. This one we can date because there is Babylon's Touren, and the name is written there. And we know Babylon's Touren first issued in 1690. So this map is after 1690. But over here is written Rudolf de Man zijn Weenberg. the vineyard of Rudolf de Man. And we know that Rudolf de Man died in 1695. So this map is between 1690 and 1695. Now, we were talking about, let's look at that. There comes the road. And what do we see there now? An 8-sided wall and the words verre gelegen. How did that happen? Talk of changing names. Willem van der Stel pocketed that whole Buiteposte with slaves, white staff, all the cattle, all the vegetative plants, planted fruit and vineyards and things. He took it all. That is the original Nkandla. You know what happened to him in the end? And the company, after a certain day, after Herbst was an early forcer was Lawrence Visser, after whom Visser's Baai was the Lawrence Visser and
Lawrence
these names. But he didn't, he repatriated, he was a German, went back. Then, what do we still have? Let us now look at the outstations of at the next one, the outstations of the Overberg. Yeah, there is Tegelhoek and Tegelhoek. All of these two at least, were created, Tegelhoek and Soeternoutsley, to cut wood on the mountain slopes of the Fietsonne. Siekenhuis, when the cattle were brought in from the Eastern Cape and the Karoo and so on, and they had to cross these mountains. They rested and recovered here. They stopped there for almost a month before the animals were in a condition to cross there in the Australian mountains. Okay, let's look at the Baramabat. Sorry, I forgot to say. At Tegelhoek, ancestor, Langenhoven. At Baramabat, look at the next one. Yeah, there it is. That's the wagon road from the Cape that goes to all the way to the east. And the hot springs were believed to have a medicinal value. They really believed in it. They came back here. I think that the holiday did them do all the journey by oxide and shoot them up. Kill. So ancestor Nasrini. Then we look at the next one there, Soeternoutsley. Yeah, there it is. This road is still called the Buiteposte because it ran from Buiteposte to Buiteposte, right to Tegelhoek and from Tegelhoek on to Swellman. Yes, to cut wood in here in the mountains. That is the process. And workshops and the folkways there. There's something remarkable here. I wonder if you can see it. There is a little square drawn here. There was buried Porsche Kampen. Now Kampen didn't leave descendants here. He died not in Kampen. And he was buried there by the missionary, the German missionary Schmidt. So that's, you know, we should have kept that. But the father of the present owner plowed that under about 30, 40 years ago. something that we should have kept. And the families, the Roslins, and sometimes, not sometimes, I believe they pronounced it as Rothman, because it was a German name, not Rothman as we know it now. And Tennyson. And of course, there are many Tennysons. So the Tennyson family meeting 2-3 years ago, there were Tennysons from Australia, from Canada, from all over the world. They were later the owners of factories. And then we go further east, next one please, and that is Buiteposte, Rietvallei and the Buffeljagtsrivier. It is between Swellendam and Zeebrugge. And there's nothing of it left, nothing at all. But it would be a very rich hunting ground for an archaeologist. The families there, Lawrence and Veldsman. What was its purpose? To trade cattle with the Koina, the Wes-Kaap particularly, and other clans further east. Yes, Rothman and Tennyson. That is such a Lawrence and Veldsman. And then we go to the South African, the most distant Buiteposte, away from the Cape. Inside South Africa, there's the walls of the timber store at Plettenberg, and there's the remainder of the Posses. But that is a beautiful piece of building. This, look at the next one. Oh, my old friend Kay. Why are there no Huguenot names among these that I listen to? Kay was a great Huguenot fraternity man. Kay de the Famille. Why? Because they didn't work for the company. And it's easy as that. They were freeburgers from the start. But look at this wall. Not a sign of clay or cement. Just drywall. And it still stands. Okay, now the family, they still live in Plettenberg Bay. The Meading family, Johan Meading. He lives at the Robberg. And when he built his house after Robberg, what do you think he discovers underground? The campsite of a Portuguese wreck from about 1580. Many artifacts scattered about them. They are now, they don't have a museum at Plettenberg Bay, but in the municipal, in the forecourt of the municipal offices, worth visiting. Meeting. Okay, now we go to one still further out. That pretty little job, very colorful, is at Lorenzo Marx. This is the Inkumati River. And that is Fort Leitsama. It was a disaster from the start. They went in search of slave, ivory, and gold, but they got malaria and died like a fly. At one time, it was overrun by pirates for about 3 months. Family, we mentioned Van der Velde. I mentioned Van der Velde, of Babylon's Truth. And his daughter married a chap called Van Taak, who was the first crossover there in 1721. Van Taak was one of the first to die, but he left his wife and children with at the Cape. And so the name survived. And he was Van Taak at Malmesbury. And yes, and our final slide, Mauritius. First at Southeast Harbour, Wiebelanport today, you'll find the Maaiburg there, where the little flag is there. And then the family Pretorius, he was a clerk, he worked in the office at that Buiteposte. Their function was to lend aid to ships in trouble, because it was not on the Brouwer. So a ship getting hurt during a tropical storm, and many ships went straight out, but some survived, and they, in a very crippled form, turned up at Mauritius. And at one time, for about 6 months, the crew of one ship lived there. And nobody knew where they were, and that they were actually survivors of that great storm. And then they survived. And on Mauritius, and from that time, there was an outstation. Pretorius went there as a clerk and under the name of Scopes. And then he Latinized his name, Pretorius, very grand. But our other people there, who later moved from the Buiteposte back there, up across to up there, where Port Louis is now. Sorry for that, I missed it. There, red spot. That is Kuiper's Eiland. And the Kuiper, the Cooper, we worked there and assisted ships that came in crippled was Simon, answered to the Simon family. And his wife is another famous islander, Pitanella Familio. And one of his daughters there married a chap called De Vries. So Simon and Pitanella were the parents-in-law of the De Vries ancestor. And they returned to the Cape where the outstation was closed in 1709. Okay, so 44 ancestors whose family name, whose original bearers I found on the version on the presentation. Are there any questions?
Let me assist Dr. Sleigh. Before I show my hands, I've got one question. How long did it take, like for, you say there was a vegetable garden in Fisher.
Yes.
So how long would it take by ox wagon for the fresh vegetables to get from Fisher to the castle? Go to the castle?
No, not from Fisher to the castle. Fisher to Simonstown.
And also, like from the meat from the slachtersveld to the Cape.
They came walking.
So they were slaughtered at the Cape. Because I was thinking the meat would be taught by the time it gets back. Okay. Let me have some names, please. Any questions?
Good.
Okay, this gentleman here.
Just quickly, Somerset West, was the original Hartogos Holland outpost, was that where the actual building is now of Verleven, or was it more downstream?
More downstream.
Is there anything left of the original?
Because that was just the farmers. And Willem himself wanted something much more grand.
Thanks.
Okay, that gentleman next to Esau.
Yes. Sorry, can I just say about the house of Fairfield? You put your compass down on the floor of at the front door, at the main entrance. It is precisely correct north and south. I wonder whether that was done intentionally.
I was told that I had ancestors that stayed at Askew, in what is now Askew, with the surname Anosi, A-N-O-S-I. I don't know if that rings a bell anywhere.
I do not know. I'm sorry, I can't say.
Maybe Dr. Robinson, do you know of anything?
Yes, the people that
Any other questions? Yeah?
Was that not, sorry, was that not a medical doctor?
Right.
Wait, the rings of the bell, but something medical.
I suggest maybe you speak to Dr. Robinson afterwards, maybe she can assist you. Question here?
The origin of the name Buiteposte. I assume that the town was named after the rivier.
Yes.
Bot, die wingere begin nou bot, of 'n mens kan baie bot wees. Waar kom die naam vandaan?
Koina het dit genoemd die Botterrivier.
Botter,
Botter,
Botter.
wat jy op jou boot is.
Butter.
Is that the origin of the name?
Are you after? Mr. Manuel, you moet net mooi hard praat.
Okay, my name is Ibrahim Manuel of Wes-Kaap, and I would like to thank Dr. Dan Sleigh for contributing and sharing the research on the Buiteposte in Wes-Kaap. Our exile that were vanished in the slave handed left a manuscript, and in the manuscript, according to what they wrote there, when some of the slaves in exile escaped, corresponds and match with your research. So we would like to thank you, and we also were able to have an exhibition in the Trocken Museum in 2003 in Amsterdam. And also a book was published, but we would like to mention and acknowledge you for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manuel. Three more questions, Dr. Sleigh? Any questions? There you go.
It's not really a question. I'd like to ask Dr. Sleigh, I think many people see Milnerton Lagoon as a natural feature, and in his book he says the Dutch East India Company cut through the sand dunes to let the Buiteposte run. Perhaps you can just mention that, because I think many people think of Milnerton Lagoon is something that's always been there.
You know where that Buiteposte begins? You go to Malmesbury, the museum in the old Jewish church, and the fountain where the river begins, with the streams, right next to the all through the slot and the sea. So this is all.
Doctor, you focus on the families, obviously those that were freeburgers and their farmers, but there were also soldiers that came and they were working for the Dutch East Indian Company. I think when I originally made contact, I don't know who I made contact, but the idea was to get to you, because I'm looking for military ancestry that actually worked for the Dutch East India Company. I'm talking military captains. Paul Paulson, he died here in Vienna, it took 1777, but apparently he would have served the governor, and he was basically in charge of infantry. They were placed in Batavia, but they moved in between the Cape all the time, and he came to retire here. So I'd like to know at what stage you're actually going to focus on the military families that actually manned that the posts as well. If it's possible at all.
My study was on the outstations, the Buiteposte.
Maybe we should refer you to Jaco. Jaco, waar is jy?
Awesome.
Jaco?
Okay.
Kan jy vir my help na die tyd? Okay, yeah?
Hi, you've shown us such wonderful slides, and I really appreciate seeing them. Is there a website, or do you have a collection of some of these?
Can I answer that question? I was going to say it once we completely finish. The whole talk that was presented here will be on our Western Cape GGSA website. Okay, the address is www. There we go.
GSSA.
Douglas will load up. He's taken an audio recording and the slides, so it will be on our website in a day or two.
No, you can have it in 5 minutes. In the library here, you will find a grote atlas van the Veluwe. Part 5, Africa. And they're all from there. I helped to compile it, and you see my name on the front cover. It's in the library.
Any other questions? Lady there?
Waar kan die mense die klassisie lijst kry van die mense die POC bote was, skepe was?
Laat Jaco vir jou antwoord.
Dit is nie wat so kwaad as het Afrika. Die soldijregisters. Dit is nie vast. Dit is recht, nee. Soldijboeken.
Ja, maar je kan baie van die publikaties is op die rekenaar.
Op internet.
Daar is opvarende, dis ons webtuiste, né? Ja, daar is 'n webtuiste met die naam van opvarende. Ek is nie presies seker die adres nie, maar daar is baie inligting en ook op die EGGSA se webwerf. Dit is www.eggsa.org. Is daar transkripsies, daar is 'n man voor dit Keller. Hy woon in Nederland en hy gaan daar na die argiewe toe en hy doen baie transkripsies van die dokumente daar en dit is op die EGGSA se webwerf beskikbaar.
Ja.
Iewers, Lorraine, you?
Yeah. June McKinnon asked me to ask you, please, Doctor. She was doing Willem van Skalkwyk van der Merwe, and did he die in bed or was he murdered by AWOL soldiers?
That sounds like June for you.
And then she gets me to ask her.
Is dit stamvader Willem?
Skap Willem.
Skap Willem is die seun van Willem. Hy is die tweede geslag.
Scott Willem alias van der Merwe.
They just have natural birth, they're not
Easy answer.
What year is doesn't she say?
No, she didn't.
Willem
We
van der Merwe
went to
died in
telephonic
1716.
and she couldn't get here.
Yeah,
She's writing a book about it.
Died on his farm in Buffalo, Germany.
Okay, I'll thank you.
12th of July.
I told you.
Ik heb nog één vraag gekregen. Eerst laat wat ik daar zeg. Dame.
Hi, Doctor. I'm a tourist guide to operator, and of course, the Cape of Good Hope is a very popular spot. As you know, we have many visitors going to that part of Cape Town, the Western Cape. So, can you give a little bit history of what the Dutch did there? Because there's the Skeipsbaan, the little house there, and the cannons and all of that. Is there anything related to what the Dutch did? Cape of Good Hope, yes, Cape Point.
No, they did nothing there. They never went there.
Okay.
They had no business there. So
Like Lookout Point
so
and
this
that
is
kind of
it
thing.
was only shown by the British government around about 1860, around about that. Okay. Before that, there was a Khoinak tribe. The Khoinak group lived there. And his name was, the headman's name I have somewhere in my head. But there is a book called The Farms of the Southern Peninsula, published by the Historical Society of, not Fishes, the other one, the next one? What's it? And I have a copy of it at home. The Dutch East India Company did not go south of Summerstown. Sent by sea.
If there's one last question, Nikki.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
How did you guys manage to get integrated into the whole Afrikaner identity?
Why I look at you, perhaps you can answer.
Oh, okay.
I don't know anything about the country.
Okay. Ons enige hier genote experts hierso. Andrew, nie, Paulus nie, okay.
Ek dink die dit spesiale laat doen saam met ons. Dit was duur en dit het oorkry.
And there was the was ook slim met die dominee. Hulle moes gesê hulle sal betaal vir die dominee as hy Hollands is, maar as hulle Franse dominee soek dan moet hulle self betaal. Toe gaan hulle maar vir die een wat deur die kompanie betaal word, wat toe daarvan is die kerk in Hollands. In Frans ook.
Mag ek net byvoeg? Dit was beleid van die kompanie om net Hollands te bevorder. Baie Afrikaanse Duitse vanne is verander na Hollandse vanne. En dieselfde geld vir die Frans, hoe vinniger hulle op Frans te praat hoe meer.
Maar ek dink ook hoekom van die Duitse en die Franse vanne vir Hollands is om aan te sluit by wat daai meneer gesê het, jou predikante was Nederlands. So, kom ons, as ek nou my stamvader, die Koetsers, oorspronklike stamvader was gespel K-U-T-Z-E-R en toe word het C-O-E-T-Z-E-R. Omdat die Hollander hoor Koetser, die Duitser kan nie skryf nie, so hy weet nie hoe om het te spel nie. So die Hollandse skrywer hoor Koetser en hy spel het op die Hollandse manier, want hy weet ook nie hoe om het anders te spel. En dit is hoe baie van die Duitse en Franse vanne vir Holland sê.
I am a member of the BOC Foundation. We do, as I said before, I suddenly realized I've said this before. I remember. Okay. Conservation, education, and cultural tourism. And what I'm doing now is to ask for members, for new members who would like to join. Please do. We publish a newsletter once a term with news about the Dutch East India Company and its activities locally and abroad. So if you are interested in the Dutch East India Company, you know where to come.
Dr. Sleigh, can I maybe make a suggestion that you give the contact details to Doug, and he can put it on our website, so if anybody then wants to join, they can go via our website because we've given the address, and then we can follow that route.
Thank you very much.
All right, then I want to thank Dr. Sleigh for a wonderful talk, and you can see by the sea of faces in front of you that you are still a very, very sought after speaker, and I hope you will still be speaking to us for a very long time, because you have such a wealth of knowledge that we can almost get you once a year and we will never get tired of you. So on behalf of all the societies and all the people represented here today, I would like to thank you and present you with a little card and a little gift.
Not necessary. It's always welcome.